Hi, this is Janet Glynn, and what I'm going to go over today is the cutting and assembly instructions for Southington's Saturday Sampler Block of the Month for April. So the first thing I like to do is tell you that the kits have been heavily pressed with Mary Ellen's Best Press. It's a very important thing to keep your fabrics nice and stable. The other thing is we're going to be using the Creative Grid Perfect Rectangle Ruler. For those of you who have taken my class in the past, the Perfect Rectangle Ruler was used in the years 2016 and 2017, so you might already have them. So we're going to go ahead and get cutting our kits. The first thing on the tan that you want to cut is two 2 7/8 inch squares, and what I've done is I've drawn a diagonal line on the back of each one. Those will be for our half square triangles. The next cuts you will make are 2 strips at 4.5 inches wide. Those will be used for our perfect rectangle along the outside of our block. And the last strip you're going to cut is a 5-inch wide strip of the tan, and that will be used for our tilted center. With the red, same thing. We're going to cut 2 7/8 inch 2 squares and 2 4.5 inch wide rectangles from our red piece of fabric. The green's pretty simple. You're given a square of green, and what I'd like you to do is cut your square into 4 1.5 by 6.5 inch strips. The orange, you're going to be receiving a square of orange. Those will be cut 2 across, 2 down at 1.5 inches square. And then the last one is the center of our block. This is going to be our tilted center, and this is cut at 5-inch square. All right, so let's get going. Our 2 red 4.5 inch pieces right sides together, and our 2 tan 4.5 inch strips right sides together, and we're just going to lay them on top of each other. So I have 4 layers of fabric. The Perfect Rectangle Ruler has a notch at the top, which we're going to cut, and a notch at the bottom, which I will show you how to trim as well. So the first thing we want to do is lay the top of our ruler, the skinnier part at the top of our strip, and the 4.5 inch marking at the bottom of the strip. And we're going to clean off one edge and go ahead and start cutting our perfect rectangles. So I'm just going to line up the top and the bottom on the marks, take our first angle, clean up our edge, cut off the top notch, and then what we're going to do is we're going to slide the rectangle up to the bottom and cut this second notch. It's very important to get that notch as well. So we're just going to lay that right back on our perfect rectangle, and again cut that little notch off. Okay, so what we have here is all the pieces to make the very first side of our block. We have, we have the top piece and the bottom pieces. So everything I've cut on that first one is going to yield one side of our perfect rectangle square here. Okay, so let me go ahead and cut the next 3. So all we do is we rotate the ruler 180 degrees, line up that freshly cut angle that we did, and cut our second rectangle. Don't forget to cut the little notch up at the top, slide the ruler to the bottom, and also cut that notch off as well. Rotate the ruler and do it 2 more times. So we'll cut here, cut the notch, slide up the ruler, and cut the notch at the bottom. And last one, turn it 180. The narrow part of the ruler is now at the bottom of the strip. And the 4.5 line is now at the top of the strip. Cut off my notch at the top, slide my ruler down, and cut off the notch at the bottom. These notches, once you trim them off, will help you align the two pieces and make it easier for the block to go together. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is set up all our pieces. Remember, each one of these is its own block. Put our triangle. Okay, takes a minute. And we'll get this set up. It's this one and our next one. Go ahead and put the nice wide ends of the tans together first, and then we can go ahead and build our rectangles. So we have that one. Open this one up. That one becomes the rectangle for that group, and our last one for this group. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab, whoops, wrong way. We're going to go ahead and grab our two halves, and as we place them together, our notches are going to fit right at the top of our red piece. So the notches that we cut here are now aligned with the top of the red and also at the bottom. So you can see the bottom of the tan, how it lines up perfectly with the red edge. And if I flip it around, the edge of the red fits perfectly with the notch that we cut on the tan. So we're going to go ahead and sew 1/4 inch from that outer angle right here, 1/4 inch, and end up right down at the bottom. So I'm going to sew that for a few times just to get a couple going for you. Just like I do in class, I'm only going to do a few of them. And then we're going to press these pieces toward the red. So hold on to it, that 1/4 inch, all the way from the very beginning to the very end, very important. So let me grab another one, match up the notches, and go ahead and sew it 1/4. Do 2 more. So once you sew your two perfect rectangles together at that 1/4 inch, what we're going to do is press them toward the red. So let me go ahead and do that. And when we put these two together, they're going to be the wide tan with the wide tan. So here, let's get this just like this. So I'll go ahead and sew these at the wide tan. I will probably start sewing at the 90-degree corner and not the angle that has sewn with the red and the tan. And you want to make sure that it's completely on top of each other, not at an angle or anything like that, but directly on top of each other. These two seams, even though they're pressed toward the red, gets a little bulky right here. But if you put your fingernail right there, you might be able to keep those right on top of each other, and that will make a much nicer, cleaner 1/4 inch when the time comes. So let me sew this at a 1/4 inch, starting at that 90-degree corner. And what we're going to do is press these open. Okay, so now that I have this, what I'd like to do is to open my seam and press it flat. So let me go ahead and do that. I give the blocks a little tug apart just to make sure that I'm not catching any fabric in the pressing of it. Okay, so we have those, and I have 4 of those made up. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is this inner tilted square in a square. So go ahead and grab your 5-inch strip, and we're also going to use our perfect rectangle ruler one more time. This time, because our strip is 5 inches wide, because our block was 5 inches, we're going to cut our perfect rectangles using the top and the 5-inch mark. And this time, because we're doing the tilted square, we don't need to cut any notches. We're just going to cut the triangles. So pretty simple. We're just going to start here, do another 180, and make 4 of those. So let me quickly cut those for you. So, and just cleaning up that one edge from the beginning of my triangle. And again, don't worry about the notches for this. Okay, there's number 2. And so I'm using the 5-inch again because my inner square is 5 inches. Okay, so what we're going to do next is find the center of the longest edge of our triangle. So we're going to find the center. So I'm just going to bring this right up to this point, right up at the top, give it a little press, and mark it with a little pencil or friction pen, whatever you have. So each one of those gets a mark on the longest edge. And just a little tick mark. And we're also, I brought a white marker. We're going to mark the center of our 5-inch square. So let me go grab that. And again, we're just going to fold this in half to find the centers of these. And this time I brought a white marker, so I'll be able to mark that one, this one, and one more time. These marks will ensure that you have sufficient tan around, so when you go to trim it, you'll have enough to trim away. And it helps to guide you where to put the tans on each side. So what happens with the tilted square is the first one that we sew on will actually start from those 2 center marks to the small side. And we're not going to sew this because by the 4th side we're going to finish our seam. Once that 3rd one gets on, then we go ahead and finish. So we're going to put our lines together and we're just going to sew from the center off. Okay? And then we're going to press that and just keep going around each time, every time, checking our center marks. And trimming. Okay, so start in the center, and I'll just do a quick little back stitch just to hold that in place, and we're going to sew right off the tan. Okay. So every time you add, so you'll see that I have only sewed half of this. So every time you add one of these tan triangles, you need to cut off the excess tan on this side. So I just took my perfect rectangle ruler because I have a nice 90-degree, and I'm able to trim that off before I add the next one. Okay. So now that I have this one sewn, I'm going to press them all toward the triangle. So we're going to trim, and we're going to press, and then we're going to add. Okay, so I've only pressed this half. I've left this alone. So the next one goes on, and we're going to match up the center lines, and we're going to sew this one all the way across. Okay, so 1/4 of an inch all the way. We're going to do this a couple more times. Okay. Trim. Get a nice 90-degree corner here. And we're going to press it again toward the triangle. Okay. The next one's going to go on. Again, I'm just going to match those two center lines and sew 1/4 of an inch. Every time you add one of these, you'll notice that there is a little notch up at the top, and that little valley right there, that's your 1/4 of an inch. So you want to hit that so that your tan goes straight across. And we're going to trim off the edge. Just that little section that hangs over, and we're going to press it toward the triangle. The last one we're going to put on just like the others, just move the first one out of the way. Match up our little center marks. Here's my little notch, and again, 1/4 of an inch all the way down. Okay. Trim off our excess on the end. Don't trim the triangle that's already on there. Push that right out of the way. Nice 90-degree corner, and we're going to go ahead and trim off that little excess piece and press it. All right, so now we're back to the beginning, and we'll just go ahead and put this straight down again, and here's our little notch at the end, and we'll go ahead and continue to sew this all the way across. Okay, just finish it up. You should hit that other mark. Just go beyond that line of stitching, 1 or 2 stitches. I just backed up 1 or 2 just to hold that in. Let me trim some of these threads. They'll get trimmed off in a sec anyway. And again, this last one, we're going to press it, finish it, pressing toward the triangle one more time. Okay, so now we have a tilted square, but we need to make this square 6.5 inches to fit in the center of our block. So I brought my 6.5 inch creative grid ruler, and we're going to line up the 6.5 inch ruler so that 1/4 of an inch mark is beyond each of these intersections, so that I have enough to add my next piece. I'll still have my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So just go ahead and lay your 6.5 inch ruler so that you have 1/4 inch excess at the tips of each of these black points. And then we're going to just cut all the way around to get it 6.5. So I'm going to lay this down. I'm just going to check that every point has a 6.5 inch. I just kind of move my ruler around a little bit. So each one has a 6.5. So I'm just going to go around it all 4 sides. Okay. Whoops. All right, so you'll notice that each of these now has enough for a seam allowance. Okay. So now it's just a matter of really putting our blocks together. I've already completed my half square triangles. It's the same way we've always done half square triangles, where we drew the line on the back, we put the red on top of the tan, and we sewed 1/4 of an inch from each side of the line, cut on the line, and then we pressed it to the red. So that was easy enough. So now we can continue to build out from the center. We're going to make this whole center here. So on this block, we'll go ahead and add our 1.5 by 6.5 inch green. And then to these, oops, I could move this over a little bit. And then you're going to take the other two 1.5 by 6.5 inch greens, and we're going to add our little orange 1.5 inch corner squares, and we're going to complete our little center block to sew the top to the center to this bottom. Okay? And then the last thing we need to do is put in our perfect rectangles. So to the sides of these, we're going to add our 2 sides. And then we're going to make our bottom row, same thing, add our half square triangles so that the tans are always pointing out to the corners. So we have this one pointing to the outside, this one pointing to the outside, and this one. So once you get your top row sewn together to the center row and to the bottom row, basically your April block is finished and put together. What I'd like to do is come up a little bit closer and show you where the notches are on the perfect rectangle so that you can identify them. Okay? All right. So you'll see on the perfect rectangle the markings all the way down. You can make these blocks all the way to 9 inches high. Okay, as a finished 9-inch finished perfect square, perfect rectangle. You'll notice the 4.5 inch mark. How's that? Good. Is right here. It goes all the way down to 4. The 4.5 has the black line. That will be the bottom of our 4.5 inch strip when we make the half rectangles. The 5 line is when we make the tilted square in the center. Okay, don't forget this little notch down at the bottom, and don't forget the notch on the edge. So how Sampler is going to happen, we will be available to you on Tuesdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. until 2 in the afternoon. Just call us 860 793-6639, and we can run your kits out to the car, but you must be showing us your March schoolhouse block to get your April kit free. Okay? If you need the perfect rectangle ruler, again, just call us in the store. We can ring things through over the phone, not a problem, and run them out to the car for you. So for those who need our email, the best way to contact us is via email at close@snet.net, and our phone number is here as well. So we'd be happy to help you. I hope you enjoy this month's block and like it if you do enjoy it. And here is our information. Have a great day.